Hello, hello, and welcome to the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net here on the Farmacy Seeds Network. This is an amateur radio net provided by the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club and yours truly, and streamed live to you via the Farmacy Seeds Network YouTube channel. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. We've had some pretty good radio activity tonight due to inclement weather that's come through. A lot of weather reporting was going on. And I'm sure that'll be an element of the conversation tonight. Without further ado, I have to go and get this net started because I'm actually about a minute late starting the net. This is KD2IIN net control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. The Sunday Night All Things Natural Net is an amateur radio net provided by the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club via the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club's main repeater at 146.805 megahertz with a PL tone of 103.5 and a negative shift of 600 kilohertz. This net is dedicated primarily to regenerative agriculture, farming, gardening, and ecology, although the scope of our conversation often goes quite wider than that. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. KD2IIN net control here, looking for check-ins for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net.
W2RWS, Rob from Pine Plains.
One. It might be a quiet night tonight with the weather. Alright, then the net recognizes W2RWS, Rob. If there are any further check-ins, please call now. Hey, GLS.
KD2RFI, Bob.
There's Bob. KD2RFI. Wow, I can't write tonight. We got Rob and Bob. Boy, I'll mix those up a couple times, I bet.
Here's K2PHM, but I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to be natural.
Hey, Drops Family Garden. Good to see you. Alright, the net also recognizes KD2RFI and K2BHM. I'll do one more opportunity for check-ins and then we'll go ahead and start at the top of the list. Any further check-ins, please call now. Good, GLS, good. How are you? Alright, no further check-ins at this time. We're going to roll to the top of the list. W2RWS, Rob, how are you this evening? How's the weather over there?
Good evening. We've got horizontal rain, then it stops, then it's fine, and then it rains again. We had some severe wind coming up, so I got my candles, not candles, what do you call it, the alcohol lamps. I got them ready and my flashlight's ready. But we're fine over here. I wanted to mention, I mentioned it this morning, and at the risk of repeating myself, I wanted to bring up those hornets, those murder hornets or whatever they are. But more importantly, I was doing some research on the little radios that they strapped onto the bee. It's a Wi-Fi with a parabolic antenna they did track it with.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, I'd heard about the tracking thing, and I had not went back and dug into it. I just, I got about a million things going on right now, and it seems like every day another million falls into the list. But yeah, I did see a headline somewhere along the way. They found like 200 queens inside of one nest, and I didn't realize it was Wi-Fi based. Is that 2.4 gigahertz?
But I do have the guy's name from a photograph with the parabolic antenna and his iPhone. It's a 12-hour battery to that tiny little thing as big as a pencil eraser, and an antenna probably about 2 inches long, really thin wire, and Wi-Fi with a parabolic, and it goes out of range very quickly. But they did manage to track it. They thought the hornet's nest was in the ground, but they found a hole in a tree. Thank goodness. Now, if the female, the queen, gets fertilized and then takes off, she could start another colony. The next phase is killing honeybees, and they're watching out for that. But right now, there's no way of tracking.
That's okay, Chris. Thanks for coming by. All right, very interesting. I'm glad you brought this up, and like I said, I haven't dug into it that much, but yeah, I understand they're pretty prolific once they get going. So I'm hoping they can shut that down. But as hopeful as I am, I'm not super optimistic about it, given their ability to proliferate. It's very interesting that they're using that sort of tracking device. I know there's a number of different types of tracking equipment on the market today, and there's actually a Sasquatch researcher who was doing some tracking for Sasquatch, but that's a whole nother conversation. We won't open 14 cans of worms at once. But I think what we'll do is roll on down the list here to KD2 RFI and see what he has to say about it. KD2 RFI is also a beekeeper, for those who don't know. So Bob, pick it up. Thanks for coming by, Chris.
RFI. Good evening, everyone.
I missed it too, and haven't had a chance to get back to it.
I did hear some of the basics. I knew about the tracker they put on it and whatnot.
Hey, Kylie.
And it was like limited range, and they were expecting it more in the ground, but I guess they found them in a tree. So there was definitely, I read all the same stuff you guys did. I guess they got like over 500 bees out of the tree, or hornets, I should say, and 200 of them were queens. As far as how many queens have already left the nest, if any, I guess it's anybody's guess. So I would say it's probably safe to say there's a lot more out there than what we really know about. They're easily, kind of like Bigfoot. May not always see them, but they're out there. I got limited media resources, especially when it storms like tonight. I just tried hopping on the internet to try and follow along the comments on YouTube, but the internet's not working. So, and on a good day, it barely works. So, my knowledge of what's going on with these burner hornets, or as they media likes to call them, is very limited at this point. So, not a whole lot going on this end. We did get a couple good heavy wind gusts up here, and a little bit of rain on and off, but I think on the northern fringe of the whole system. So, not too awful bad. One thing I did notice about my hives earlier today, though, is
happy birthday, Chris.
Bar hive I have, it's actually the only one. A whole lot of wax right outside the entrance of it. Little wax chunks, almost like they were being raided. About a week ago, they were perfectly fine. Everything looked good, and then also we got a pile of wax outside the front entrance. So I'm not sure. I'm not going to open them up because it's too chilly, so we'll just wait and see how it goes. Other than that, I'll send it back to you, CJ. KD2, RFI.
KD2 and Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. Interesting, Bob. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that at the top bar. That doesn't sound promising. Yeah, it's interesting about these murder hornets. I agree. I think this is going to be a lot harder to beat. And the thought that keeps going in my head about it is, okay, what's the antigen? There's got to be some natural predator that we can employ in this. But of course, we know how that pathway can go too. We introduce something else, and then we have another whole problem on our hands. So I don't know what the solution is here. But let's move in down the list here and finish greeting everybody, and then we'll do another opportunity for check-ins, and then we'll roll back up to Rob. Let's roll on down to Jim, K2, BHM. I'll try and make your lives, Chris. I'm sorry, things have just been busy.
Thanks, K2, BHM. I'm just wondering, maybe they went with 5 gig Wi-Fi because of the smaller antenna system.
That's likely.
Give them a smaller footprint. But in any event, maybe if we can jam them with the proper signals, we can disorient them and on their merry way. I don't know, whatever. It's been a long day. Anyhow, back to you, K2BHM.
I like your jamming idea. My thought is, if we're capturing a queen and tracking it to the nest, I guess for research you want to know how many are there and take counts and stuff. But my thought is, while you're putting the 5G, maybe you're right, maybe it is 5G. While you're putting the 5G tracker on there, maybe put a 10 gig resonant thing on there and wait till she gets back to the nest, and then send an EMP pulse that's resonant at that frequency and fry the whole package. I don't know. Just a modern warfare thought. Anyway, let's just do a pause here for check-ins, and then we'll roll back through the list. This is KD2IIN Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. If there are any further check-ins, please call now. All right, no further check-ins at this time. We'll roll back to the top list. W2RWS, Rob, pick it up.
So they put the temperature sensor in with that transmitter because the nest runs at 90 degrees. So they figured if they could ping a temperature and it's 90 degrees, the bees in the nest, which I thought was really sharp. So anyway, I got this guy's name. I might try and find his email from Washington State's, whatever it is, Department of whatever the heck it is, agriculture. He was holding one of those antennas, and I'd love to just ask him what the heck it is. It also said in the article that those things were commercially available, which I thought was pretty cool. So maybe we could do a fox hunt with crickets.
Cricket hunt. I like that idea. If you come across that information, or if you've got his name handy, I'd love to get that down. I'd love to look into this a little more myself. I think this is going to be an up-and-coming threat for our honeybees, even here on the East Coast at some point. The Africanized honeybees have spread all through the South, and they continue to spread northward. Not at a phenomenal rate, but they seem to keep moving north slowly and acclimatizing. So I think at some point this is going to become a concern for us as well, which is kind of a scary thing to consider when we are already up against a tremendous amount of natural and environmental hazards and challenges regarding our European honeybee. But anyway, let's roll on down to Bob, KD2 RFI. Hey, Big Rob! What's going on, dude?
I'm having enough trouble finding my glasses. Want to put a transmitter on a cricket? Have me find a cricket? I don't know. That'd be interesting. Anyway, I know the honeybees do have a natural defense, at least over in Asia they do.
That's the Asian bee, though.
With these hornets. I know there's a slight temperature change from what the honeybee can withstand compared to what the hornet can withstand. I don't have the actual numbers in front of me, but it's like 110 degrees versus 112 degrees.
Yep.
So where the honeybee can go a slightly higher temperature by a degree or two, so they kind of swarm the hornet the scout when it comes into their hive, and they just ball up around it and start vibrating and raise the temperature within that ball up to the point where it kills the scout hornet. So the scout hornet doesn't make it back to the nest to alert the nest.
Hey,
where
portable
the
tree.
Honeybee colony is. They wind up being safe. So that's pretty interesting. I don't know, CJ, you know what the exact temperature is difference honeybees versus these hornets as far as what they can withstand?
If I remember correctly, the American honeybee can do like 110, and I think it's the Japanese honeybee that's able to actually wipe these guys out, and I think they can do as high as like 120 or 122. It was a much higher temperature than I would have expected, but I'm not entirely sure. But I'll put it back to you for further comment.
There is a slight temperature difference where the honeybees are more resilient to the higher temperature.
We used to have those too, Kylie.
So they're able to use that to their advantage as long as they can knock off the scout before.
That's awesome, GLS.
They're definitely safe. So it'd be interesting to see if nature takes its course and the honeybees on this side of the pond, so to speak, are able to come up with the same formulation and defense.
If they adapt to it.
Something similar occasionally with like yellow jackets and other,
Hey, Les.
like white-faced horneters and such when they try and enter a colony, but not to the same degree that these Asian hornets, they would have to ball up around them. So, I don't know, just something to think about. It always seems that, if we just leave things alone sometimes, nature finds a way.
Right with you,
He's definitely
GLS.
right. If we introduce the natural pest to the Asian hornet, this is usually another problem that comes about that we don't realize right up front and wind up creating a whole other issue and trying to solve
Bob, agree very much. Yeah, it's interesting. I almost wonder if we couldn't even do some sort of an entrance restriction. I know or at least my understanding is the quote-unquote murder hornets are significantly larger than the honeybees, so maybe there's a mesh size that would allow our honeybees into the nest and not the murder hornets. Although I understand they do sit outside and nab them off out there as well. One of the documentaries I was watching on this, they were talking about how I can't remember if it was the Japanese honeybee or the European honeybee. But they were talking about how they would come back into the nest very fast and just clear into the entrance to avoid being attacked by roving murder bees or murder hornets, as it were. It'll be interesting to see how all this evolves. And yeah, interesting you mentioned the not interfering thing. I just did an interview. In fact, I just put it up today with a Native American Kawakiwak tribe member from the Pacific Northwest, talking about how they sustainably harvest things out there and how their interaction with nature actually helps maintain the natural environment. And as we were talking, I was realizing just how much of a different model that is in their culture than it is in ours, where we kind of we want to come in and bulldoze an area and turn it into what we want, and rather than interacting with the environment and enhancing that environment. It's a lot to think about, but awesome. All right, let's roll on down to Jim, K2BHM, and then we'll do another pause and opportunity for check-ins. K2BHM, pick it up. I'm very faint.
K2BHM. This might be a little bit long, but the temperature sensitivity triggered some memories. I did some work on SUNY back before I retired.
I'm not sure why, Tree.
Where we took laser beams and went through some optics and so forth and so on, and some other manipulations.
Oh, color, yeah.
And we were able to take DNA and untwist, untangle, and unzip it, and measure the forces required to do that, and therefore map the DNA. And then I took it a step further, and we were able to map the changes in forces as you change the temperature. And we come up with some interesting information, which was published out of England. And basically, when it hit, I think it was like 108.9 or 109 degrees or whatever, the forces cohering the DNA together detracted to zero, and the DNA fell apart. And that's why a person basically dies when their temperature goes up to 109. So maybe that has something to do with the situation with the honeybees. Maybe they have a different makeup or whatever, but I don't know. Another point to consider. Anyhow, back to you, K2BHM.
This is KD2IIN Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. Yeah, Jim, that's an interesting thought on that. Yeah, that whole concept of DNA, and actually all of the proteins in our bodies are their proteins are folded polypeptide chains, basically, and whether or not they stay folded and how they fold is very temperature dependent. So it's interesting, and yes, that's exactly why people die when they get a fever over 108 or 109. Yeah, and even below that, those proteins start to denature. That's an interesting concept, and it kind of ties into a conversation we had on Comrades and Farms last week and the week before. I've been I've had a guest named Brad Lauber of Lauber Seed Farms in Nebraska. He's pretty much the independent seed breeder in the United States, and he and I were discussing the concept of CRISPR. Neither one of us is sold on that technology as a safe means of moving forward, but with its powerful capabilities, we're certainly looking at it as, what potential does it hold? How is that going to affect the future, the market, our food, our health, and all that? So it's interesting you bring that up. It makes me think back to the CRISPR thing again. Maybe there's a way to handle this from a CRISPR perspective. I'm not really sure I'm sold on that's the approach to go with, but I think if we're open-minded people and and scientifically minded, we could at least consider those sort of options, even if we end up opting against them on the erring on the side of caution. Anyway, let's see if there's any further check-ins here. I'll drop. This is KD2IIN Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. If there are any further check-ins, please call now. Okay, Kylie, I hope that works out better. Alright, no further check-ins recognized at this time. We're going to roll back to the top list. W2RWS. Rob, you're up.
I might have mentioned to you, I have this plant, succulent, called the mother of a million plants. And it's got this beautiful leaf structure that has a zillion of these baby plants on the edge of the leaf, one after another after another. And I took a pocket full from Phantom Gardener, like 10 of them in my pocket, and I've successfully grown them. But I just wanted to comment that it seems like I'm starting with the same ones, and some grow really fast and some don't. They're slow growers. And I wasn't sure what the difference is because I don't see any difference. The same sun, the same soil. Also, I want to share with you something. Let me drop. I got those clear egg crates, and I've been using them with a little bit of dirt in it and put the egg crate on the top as well as the bottom, and I get a tiny little greenhouse, and I'm having much more success with the cardboard with those than the cardboard ones, which dry out really fast. Which brings me to another question. My friend suggested that a glazed terracotta pot would hold the water better and make things grow better than a unglazed inside and out terracotta pot that would dry quicker. Any thoughts?
Well, let's see. I guess I'll address the terracotta thing first. Yeah, for sure. A glazed pot wouldn't have that same wicking action. In fact, I don't know if you know it or not, you can take a couple of those pots and bury them in the ground, or partially in the ground, and keep them moist, and they'll actually act as a refrigerator due to evaporation and evaporative cooling. So yeah, I would say the glazed pot will definitely retain water better. On the mother of 1,000 plants tree, or whatever that is, yeah, seed quality is something we talk about a lot on Comrades and Farms, and that's been an ongoing discussion. It will continue to be a discussion, as it's a pretty deep and complex topic as it relates to plant pathology. But at the end of the day, yeah, you know, seeds can all look very much alike, but based on the nutrition that seed had available at the time that it formed, they can be very different as far as how they express themselves in the following generation and how vigorous they are. Without going into a long discussion on genetics and epigenetics, basically all genes are expressed in an environment, and based on what that environment is, the way that gene expresses itself will alter, and that's part of why nutritional foods, nutrient-dense foods that are high in trace mineral nutrition are so important, because all of those trace minerals are the basis for enzymes, and those enzymes perform critical functions in biological systems. So that's sort of the short explanation, and I'll put it back to you for further comment.
Sorry, they weren't seeds per se. They're little plants on the edge of the leaf that drop off, or I knock them off, and I seem to have different growing rates, although they all look the same.
Right, but that same concept applies whether it's a seed or a scion, which is what basically taking a leaf is, a scion, which is basically a genetic clone of the mother plant, but even that is affected by epigenetics. Does that make sense?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Look into epigenetics, and you know, I don't know if you've checked out Comrades and Farms, but the last, let's see, the last show we did last week with Brad Lauber, and the week previous to the week before that, we talked pretty in depth about seed quality. So those might be some beneficial information for you. I will warn you, those are long. This last week was almost 3.5 hours, and 2 weeks ago one was 2 hours. But it might be worth a listen for you. Anyway, let's roll on down to KD2 RFI, Bob. But before we do so, let me ID. This is KD2 IIN Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. All right, Bob, pick it up.
KD2 RFI. That's pretty interesting about the pots in the ground, CJ. Now, I'm assuming when you're putting those pots in the ground,
good call, purple tree.
Putting them upside down, I would imagine, to create an air pocket. And in order to maintain that temperature, I'll send it back to you quick.
Yeah. Usually they put like a some sort of a cover on it, and then the pot is kept. I forget the exact specifics of this, but basically you're putting like wet sand around it, and the wet sand gives that wicking action, so the whole pot is kept moist. And because the pot's moist and it has air flowing over it, it cools. And then, of course, being in the ground, that helps remediate against temperature. I forget what it's called, but I know I'm pretty sure it was southwestern Indians out in the desert. I should say Native Americans or First Nations people actually out in the desert that were using that as a means of refrigerating, produce and meats and that sort of stuff. It's quite a temperature difference, from my understanding. And I also have a comment here from Portable Tree in the chat on YouTube, and it says 2 pots with dirt in between will also retain water. So you can put like one pot inside the other. And those would be unglazed pots, of course. But if you can get glazed pots, that's probably an easier solution. And I'll put it back to Bob, KD2 RFI.
Alright, copy that. That's pretty interesting. I definitely know the glazing process definitely seals up all the pores in the pot, which are, I just call them clay pots generally. But yeah, you put a little glaze over them, and it pretty much seals them up, so it definitely would hold the moisture. I'm one of the ones that, if I get a plant or something inside the house, I tend to overwater it rather than underwater it, so I guess a unglazed pot or something to that degree would definitely be better for me to help prevent it from becoming a swamp, so to speak. So, but okay, that's pretty interesting. I know they use that same type of process in buildings. They'll use glass bottles or empty cans in like mud huts and so on and so forth to form an insulating barrier. And type of insulation, when there's not a whole lot of resources available. I think that's
for sure,
out in the Southwest.
For sure.
Mostly, if I recall. I remember seeing a program about it a while ago. All right, KD2 RFI back in there.
Yeah, for sure. They went low tech, reliable, I guess would be the way to put it, which is a really cool concept. I always try to keep that model in mind, even as I build some crazy technologically oriented stuff. Speaking of technologically oriented, let's roll on down to Jim, K2BHM.
I didn't do it. Don't blame me. Thanks, CJ. As I understand it, CRISPR is a word processor type environment for gene therapy.
Gene editing,
you can manipulate it and tweak it and whatever to work out whatever you want to eradicate. But that's a little bit far-fetched right now. I don't know if the theory is to fruition, whatever. I'm going to give it a few years before I trust it to cure the common cold or whatever. But it is an interesting and very cutting-edge technology. And it will eventually make it there. So, very interesting, K2BHM.
For sure. Yeah, CRISPR is effectively like a word editor where you can go in and edit specific genes. If you want, Jim, I have a video from my friend Brad, who is that seed breeder. I can actually share that with you. He goes into a little bit more detail about it and the differences between natural selection breeding and heirloom versus hybrids versus CRISPR versus GMO or transgenic, which is a very different approach. Although I think most of us are aware at this point of some of the downsides of the transgenic stuff. And of course, from my perspective, that's something to be cautious about with any new technology like this. CRISPR certainly has a lot of potential, but without long-term study, I don't think we can really fully understand what the hazards might be later down the road. And it'd be a shame to interfere with Mother Nature again and then find out we're wrong again. We've made another really huge mistake. And then the bigger question in that is, what are the long-term consequences, and can we ever take the genie back into the bottle after we do that? Anyway, we're down at the bottom of the list here. This is KD2IIN Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. And if there's any further check-ins, please call now. Very good call, Portable Tree. Thanks, Kirsten. All right, no further check-ins recognized at this time. I'm going to roll back to the top of the list, but before we do, have a comment here from Portable Tree here in the YouTube chat. He says, an old washing machine cylinders are great because they have holes already in it. You then have a smaller container on the inside, and that makes like a wicking evaporative air conditioner. So that might be an idea for you, Rob, since we're coming back around to you. And I'll put it to Rob, W2RWS.
My wife and I have a question about our lilacs. What's the best time of year to trim them? They're getting a little out of control, and I thought I would top them off. The fall, or should we wait for the spring?
Well, you say top them off. Do you mean pruning?
Yes, shape them, basically.
Yeah. Pruning is fine in the fall or the spring. Fall's probably better. They'll have a chance to rest over the winter, and then they can pop back out in the spring. Although my experience is once you have a lilac bush established, it's awfully hard to kill it unless you're really trying, and even then it can be tricky. But I would say fall is probably a better bet, or probably even could do it midwinter. I know most of the fruit farmers around here prune apples and pears and plums and stuff in late February, early March. But either or should be fine.
Okay, that's interesting. I've also got Rose of Sharon. Is that it? Rose of Sharon? Yeah, Rose of Sharon. I grew a bunch from seed, and I'm looking to trim them, so I probably will wait until after they seed and a little, as you say, into the winter.
Yeah, I would say probably best time would be like late February when everything is dormant, and then you can just go through and prune them out. Remember, when you're pruning, never prune more than 1/3 of the total plant mass, I guess I would say. Always leave 2/3 or more of the plant mass. You don't want to cause so much damage that you're putting the plant under tremendous stress.
Oh, that's interesting, because I needed to remove a bush, and cheap person that I am decided I would replant it anyway. I wound up pulling it out with an F50, my pickup truck, and the trailer hitch and 100 feet of rope. I trimmed the hell out of it, and it's barely coming back. So I probably didn't do right by your rule.
Yep. I forget what the video is called, but I did a video on this sort of stuff a while back. There's a hormone balance that's going on there between the shoots and flowers of the plants and the roots of the plant, and it's a cytokine auxin balance, and those two hormones are antagonistic against each other. So as you're pruning the top back, you're basically reducing the amount of auxins in the plant, which increases the total cytokine, right? And that is what promotes root growth. So when you prune the top back, you're actually promoting root growth. And so if you go too hard, you really tip that balance way out and cause a lot of stress in the plant. And if you don't go too hard, then what you're doing is actually you're improving the capability of the roots. And since everything comes from the roots, and truly healthy plants are about 80% of their total plant mass is in the roots, in the soil, that might kind of shed some light on it for you.
If I could bring something else up, I have yuccas. and they have hardy roots, and boy, do they come up quick. And I kind of want to encourage them. I'm getting outvoted by my wife and a friend that's a landscape architect that hates them. Any thoughts on the yucca plants? I think they're beautiful, and I love the flowers when they flower.
The yucca plants are beautiful, and actually that's what tapioca is made from, so maybe you can make some homemade tapioca. Yeah, I would say put them somewhere. They're basically a carefree plant. Put them somewhere where they're not going to be, a problem, or you're going to have to move them later on. Plan long term with them, that's what I would say. But other than that, that's between you and the wife, I think.
Thanks. Hey, you're not full quieting. I don't know if it's just the conditions tonight or your radio.
Probably a little bit of both. I find if I run any more power on the current antenna setup, this radio gets really hot, and I don't want to fry it. So I apologize if I'm not super crystal clear tonight, but it's also pretty wet, and my antenna is literally almost on the ground, so I apologize. I hope you're able to hear me okay. KD2IIN here, and I have another comment here from Portable Tree regarding the cooling system there. It says there was an indigenous community up north using big plastic drums. They cut out large holes on the sides 3/4 of the way up and filled the bottom with rocks and ran a piece of rope through the dirt. So apparently that was another way of wicking and cooling them. So people come up with unbelievable things to reuse and recycle. And and then he says, I've always thought that when you cut back the top and roots, those leaves, branches out would rot. Is that right? I don't know. I have to think about that. Anyway, let's roll on down the list to Bob, KD2RFI. This is KD2IIN Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. Sorry, Portable, I'm having trouble.
KD2RFI.
Back and forth.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that 30% rule, or the 1/3 rule there.
You cut back the top roots.
I tend to try to follow that as best I can with even mowing the lawn or anything with.
I'm not sure I understand your question, Tree.
Work with the plants. I try and mow my lawn later in the evening. That way, there's not as much evaporation. When you
reduce stress.
Cut the grass and it doesn't dry out as quick. I was pretty lucky this year. Well, it was kind of dry to begin with, but my lawn didn't get too awful brown. So that wasn't bad. You try and mow it often and only take off as much as you have to. And evidently that rule applies to more than just lawns. And I do the same thing at work. So I do all the mowing at work and outside lawns and grounds maintenance. So this stuff definitely helps me there as well. So I don't know, not a whole lot more to add. I'm definitely picking up a lot of good little tidbits tonight. So I definitely appreciate it, CJ. Thanks again for a great net tonight. KD2RFI back in net.
All right, always a pleasure, Bob. Sorry, I'm getting the Rob and the Bob mixed up. I do the same thing here. I mow in the evenings when the sun isn't going to cook those plants. Everything you can do to reduce stress on plants that you want to survive. And conversely, if you're trying to wipe out a certain plant, pick times when the plant is already under stress to try and wipe it out. If it's something like poison ivy or something like that you're trying to kill, take advantage of that natural environment, whether you're trying to promote a plant or take one out. All right, let's roll on down to Jim, K2BHM.
Thanks, CJ.
Interesting.
Not so much more to add other than if there's some kind of a plant or species or whatever that you want to eradicate, ask me to come over and take care of it for you. Guarantee you it'll be gone. I got a black thumb. But anyhow, other than that, I'm going to back on out and enjoy the evening. KUBHM.
All right, Jim. Well, thanks for participating and sharing your sense of humor and insight with us. Always appreciate it. And I hope you have a good evening, and I hope your wife continues to heal up well, and we'll talk to you soon, I'm sure. All right, let's just do a pause here. One last opportunity for check-ins. This is KD2IIN Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. If there are any further check-ins, please call now. Self-watering drums. Yeah.
W2 NDG. Nothing to really add, CJ. Just
The net recognizes W2NDG, Neil. Fantastic. Glad to hear the power's back. When you said your power went down and the winds were kicking up here, I was like, uh-oh, am I even going to be able to run the net tonight? I might have to go out to the mobile, but we managed to sustain power, and it seems like things have calmed down and it's going to be a more calm evening. Still misting and rain out there, which is good. We need the rain. Our aquifer is still quite low. But wonderful. Glad you joined the net. We'll roll back to the top list here. This will be our final round here. So Rob, W2RWS, pick it up.
No, pass. I'm good. I don't have anything else to discuss. Thank you, though, for the advice.
You're very welcome, and thanks for participating in the net. Greatly appreciate it. Let's see. We'll roll on back to Bob, KD2RFI.
Thanks for a great net. Jim, if you're still floating around, listen, I could really use a lot of help with some poison ivy plants. If you could look after them for me while I'm gone, I'd appreciate it if you're that good. All right. Other than that, I'm probably guessing I'm going to have to find my own way to kill them. KD2RFI. Good night, everyone.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to have to keep you in mind too, Jim. All right. And Jim is checked out here, so we'll roll back down to Neil, W2NDG.
All right. Like I said, I really have nothing to add. I stayed in listening mode to try to preserve battery power for emergencies, just in case this went on for a while. And I'd also like to add, which is unrelated to your discussion, that I am using 1 watt.
Very good. You're in Highland now, right?
Yes, and this isn't even my good antenna. Thought I'd turn it down low and conserve.
I totally understand that. I saw this storm coming in on the forecast yesterday, and I went out and plugged in the charger on the greenhouse just to make sure the greenhouse battery was topped up. Wasn't sure if I might end up needing to charge batteries or radios or whatever off it. Who knows? Yeah, not bad for 1 watt. You know, not full DFQ, but I'd say you're probably 85%, probably 85%. That's not bad for a watt at a Highland with your not the best antenna. So it's pretty good. Takes a lot of time, portable tree. A lot of time and energy. It's like trying to ride 15 horses at once. Alright, very good. Well, looks like that takes us to the bottom of the list, and it looks like everybody's clearing out here anyway, and I have another stream that's coming up here in a few minutes, so I guess we're going to go ahead and close this up. But before I do, a couple announcements. Every day at 8:35 a.m. and 6:30 p.m., the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club runs the daily check-in net. The daily check-in net is just an opportunity for people to get together and share what's going on in their lives and check in and share local news and that sort of thing. Of course, in the event of emergency conditions, it would be our daily check-in net for reporting what's going on in their local areas. What else? Let's see. The Thursday night net on Thursdays at 8 p.m. run by Dave, K2JLV. That is an amateur radio-oriented net. Revolves around Raspberry Pi, amateur radio, HF antennas, DMR, VHF, HF, and so much more. Always excellent discussions and conversations there, so I encourage you to check that out as well. And then, of course, tonight's net is the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net, run by yours truly, KD2RFI, KD2IIN. I almost hijacked your call sign, Bob. And that's here at 9 p.m. on Sundays. If you want to know more about our club, you can always visit our website at www.omarcclub.org. That's whiskey, 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 Oscar, Mike, Alpha, Romeo, Charlie, Charlie, Lima, Uniform, Bravo, Oscar, Romeo, Golf. Thanks to all those who participated. This is KD2IIN saying 7 threes and inviting you to join us again next week. This net is officially closed and this repeater is back under regular amateur use. Thanks everyone for your participation. Have a great evening. KD2IIN will be clear.
Thanks for taking me, CJ. KD2RFI, I'm clear.
Anytime, Bob. KD2IIN clear. Oh, they're good guys on there. Love my ham radio community. Good people. Geeky, thank you so much for sharing those links. I really appreciate it. And yeah, for those who don't know, who aren't into the paranormal portal as of yet, I think most of the people here are portal family. Oh, by the way, hello Julia, and welcome Conrad. I know I saw a Conrad in here somewhere. Conrad Homestead, yeah. Welcome, guys. Yeah, for those who don't know, Paranormal Portal's coming up at 10 p.m. That's run by Brent Thomas, and it's paranormal investigation of all sorts. We talk about ghosts and Bigfoot and Sasquatch and every kind of crazy paranormal phenomenon you can imagine, and a really excellent family of people in there in the chat, and lots of excellent call-ins, and Brent's a fantastic host, so I hope you go over and check that out as well. If you're looking for a link for that, Geeky Gardens in here has shared it. Also, Geeky Gardens channel, you should go check that out as well. Geeky's down in Florida, and he does some really cool gardening stuff. He's got some great kitty cat videos, and he's just a great guy and a great friend, so I hope you'll check his channel out also. So, thank you very much for coming in and participating this evening. If anyone is in chat has any questions, we've got a few more minutes here. I could address any questions, or if anything you want to chat about, I'm open to that. Before we close up, we're actually done off the radio a little bit early tonight. Thanks, Great Lakes. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been doing amateur radio since I was 14, so I got a little experience. Brent's poor eyesight. I know he has to look at some of our chat comments. Okay, Julie, we'll see you in the portal. Released Mama Cat and 3 kittens this morning. Awesome, Geeky. I bet they're stoked to be free again. For those who don't know, Geeky Gardens had a family of feral cats around, and in his township, there's a free spay and neutering program. If you can catch strays, you can bring them in, and they'll spay them or neuter them for you for free. So you can catch them, get them spayed, release them, keep the cat population limited without, you know, doing this whole euthanizing thing that seems to be a more common practice. It's kind of sad. So Geeky's actually captured a whole family of cats and had them spayed, and he's actually released them back out today, apparently. So that's awesome. I'll look forward to the video for that, Geeky. Yeah, that was really cool. And I checked on the Ponderosa lemons. Actually, I have a video scheduled for 12 a.m. as soon as Brent's stream is done. I have a video of an update for the greenhouse and a few other miscellaneous things around the farm. Nothing too exciting, but I have a shot of your Ponderosa lemons. They're still not popping up yet, Geeky, so I don't know why they're so sluggish to come up. Maybe I did something wrong, but I put them in Coast of Maine soil. I've kept them watered. They've been kept in a warm spot. So I know I'm hopeful that they'll still pop, but I know it's been a week or so. How long did yours take to germinate? I guess it'd be a good question. Ah, yes, tree. Yeah. Update coming tonight, 12 a.m. Nothing super exciting at the moment, but everything's doing good in there. Got a couple of shots of a log I skidded up, big old log I skidded up, and a few other things. I don't want to give it all away, but you know, if you've been following along and you're interested, that'll be out tonight. And if you guys haven't checked out my recent interview with Tom Seward of the Kwakiwak First Nations tribes, that was an awesome interview and a really awesome insight into the First Nations people and how they interact with the land and the things that they harvest, and not just that, but how he's following food and natural systems to follow and research Sasquatch. So that's a really awesome interview. I was really honored to have Tom on as a guest. The CG peel popped up in a bit over a week. Those who did not took 2 weeks. Oh, okay. Well, I don't think we're into the 2-week window yet. I didn't peel any of them, so that's good news. So maybe they're just not up yet. I was hoping I didn't do something silly, but you know, it's been cool and wet, and my attention hasn't been 100% on that. So you know how that goes. Plants need attention too. Apparently rye kills the bad bacteria in the soil. My dad told me that the other night. Yeah, actually, if you haven't looked into it, I don't know if John's posted, I think it's on Regenerative Academy or something. John Kempf has a whole talk on it, and actually in his book, maybe I'll be able to read some excerpts from this on Comrades and Farms. I actually want to get his permission before I read any excerpts from it. I have a lot of respect for the man. I don't want to offend him or or just cause bad blood. But he talks about disease suppressive soils, and it's really about fostering good communities of bacteria, or I should say the bacterial communities, bacterial and fungal communities that we want to foster in the soil that are good for our plants, because each community has its role in the ecosystem. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I hadn't drilled down on rye that far yet, but it's also excellent for creating nice fluffy tilth in the soil. It's one of the reasons I planted it this year. And then the other reason I planted it was because it has a great allelopathic effect against weeds. For those who don't know, that means it basically kills off other plants through some sort of exit toxin it releases. So really interesting. Or maybe it's through that bacterial pathway. But yeah. Probably never tried it, but if it grows like wheat, it'll be hard to mow if it's too thick. If you want to kill the rye back, like to kill it out as a cover crop with it and then kill it off, you want to catch that in the spring. It's about in May, just as it starts to go into flower. If you roll or crimp it down or mow it off at that point, you're pretty good chances of killing it. But before and after that, it's going to be tricky. But yeah, my understanding is it does get as tall as wheat, and I guess I'll find out this year. I've never used rye as a cover crop before, but I'm really looking forward to seeing the results. I have somewhere around 10,000 square foot in rye cover crop, rye and Austrian winter pea this winter, and everything is so green out there. It's so awesome to go out there and actually see green. Corn and rye in the backyard. Children of the rye. Nice. Yeah, you can mow it. Yeah. I mean, you could keep mowing it and kill it back for sure if you wanted to. But anyway, we're about running out of time here, and I want to drop the outro here. Thank you everyone for joining me in the chat. Thank you Geeky for sharing links and your support. I always appreciate it. Thank you for everyone for interacting, and hopefully we'll see you Tuesday night for Comrades and Farms. That's 12 a.m. Eastern and 9 p.m. Pacific, and if not, you can always catch it on the replay. Don't forget that's also available on Truth Frequency Radio live and in archive form under the Farmacy Seeds Network. And then later on, I'm putting podcasts out. I think I'm on Spotify, Google Podcast, Anchor. I'm on like 6 different podcast platforms, so those shows are released later on through the podcast format as well. So if you want to just be able to download a podcast and listen while you're driving somewhere or working or whatever, that's an alternative as well. Anyway, thank you everyone for participating and watching. Really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great evening and stay safe. And we're going to go ahead and roll the credits, as they say. Thanks for watching the Farmacy Seeds Network.